again gathered around, and it's interesting to look at the architecture of these when we start thinking about how we might want to at least look at the intersection of the cafe and the classroom. We see in the 19th century, increasingly again, we see women there, one singing and another being a waitress. Thank goodness some things never change, there you go. But increasingly, this is a crucial place. In the 19th century, what we see is that there's a development around, and particularly in the salons of Paris, that this becomes not just simply a convivial place and a place of some type, but actually becomes the site, for example, of art criticism. I mean, in the École des Beaux-Arts, where people are learning to paint like the masters, and in the Atelier, where the Impressionist school begins. If it were not for the salons of Paris, then Impressionists may never have made a claim about their legitimacy as artists. It was in the salons of Paris that art criticism came. And in art criticism, what you have is a debate around, is this good art? What is this? And of course, later, people like Hemingway come to be part of that discussion. And we know that émigrés often came to the coffee house to debate and dispute around political issues and ideas. And we know, for example, in Vienna particularly, this was so. The issue, though, is how we understand the fullness of our sites as a pastiche which offers possibilities and alternatives, that offers the bookish tranquility, but also offers the space of interactivity. Because the girls will colonise these spaces as they will. We think, well, that'll be a nice place for them to sit, and they'll all go and sit over there. And we need to be not deciding that that's where they will sit, but to understand the principles here behind the idea of a cafe as a learning place, and how we can learn from this, and the way in which these things were designed, but also the intention. What was the intention? And how was that translated into a set of physical affordances? When we look at our classrooms now, I mean, one of the things, I've given this exercise to teachers, and I've said, okay, you've got 5 fingers, 5 decades. Tell me which decade this photo was taken in. 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the noughties. 5 decades. Fingers up, please, everybody. Well, it's very interesting. I mean, we could do that now. Have a go.
Where is it decided which country?
Can you see which one? Can you see? Thank you. Give that man a prize. Turkey. You can see the flag there. I guess what I see, and I guess we can push on, but we got everything. This is what happened. One. And in large groups of teachers, and this is the thing, the point of this isn't whether you're right or wrong. The point is you wouldn't know. The point is it could have been in 1960 or it could have been last year. And this says something about our classrooms. It talks about the resilience of the traditional industrial classroom. It's cheap and it's a way you can separate and regiment and test people. It's basically fundamentally terrific for testing and separating and sorting and credentialing. That's what it's been good for. And I'm sure Joseph Lancaster would be astonished to know that his 1809 design was hanging about here so resiliently, hanging in, despite all of the other things that we're now doing in other spaces. So the interesting point here is when we think, well, what year was it? What the teachers say is, well, the thing you have to do is look at the artefacts that the students bring in. That will give you some clue. But the other things don't give you any clue. You know, who knows what it could be. So the exercise is about saying, let's look at the resilience of our classrooms. And rather than just saying, well, we've got these classrooms already, there's not much we can do. The issue for me is that there is a great, we're not going to bulldoze our industrial classrooms. But what we do have to think about is how we make them learning places. What can we do? We don't always have the resources, but we need to have the pedagogical imagination and the design mentality, and we need to be smart borrowers from each other in relation to this. We need to know what's going on. Smart borrowers, structured sharers, intentional adapters. One of the things the Japanese did at the end of the 19th century is they said, we want to have the best sort of civilization once they decide they're going to open up the West. And they got the American banking system, the French education system, the German military system, the British system of government, and they put them all together, pinched them, smart borrowers, and they came out Japanese. They came out Japanese. And I think one of the things that we'd be thinking about now is not, oh God, look at that beautiful thing, we couldn't possibly replicate that, we don't have the money, but how do we become intentional adapters? Let's look at the principles behind that, and maybe then we can do something. Maybe we can think about how we could take that and make it specific for our context, for our girls, for where we know we are, and for what we already have on the campus and what we're committed to. So cafe meets classroom. We start to think about how could we do that? How could we not necessarily abandon the classroom, but how could we build in the affordances that for someone like Jana makes her life much less schizophrenic, that she's not sort of simply compliant in our classrooms and then going off to do something else. I mean, a lot of the Janas of this world in our schools, if we said to them, girls, today we're going to teach you to bleach calico, they'd say, fine. They wouldn't say, what? You know, why would we want to do that? And I've spoken to girls and said, what would you like to learn? Well, of course, very good girls, the school I'm at, they say, whatever you want to teach me. And I said, but surely there must be things that you want to learn. No one's ever asked them that. And they're quite puzzled. And if I said to them, well, you know, you'll get a good mark if you learn to bleach calico, they'll say, here I am. Hit me with your best shot, bleaching calico. So, I mean, that's not where we want them to be. We want them to be keen and sceptical. We want them to be at the cutting edge. We don't want them to be compliant and passive and opening their mouths, as we were talking about this before, and having us to pour the things in. But that passivity and that just tell me what to do and I'll do it, it can be very happy, you know, place for teachers, but it's not where we want people to go. Because that's pleasing the teacher and pleasing the parents, but it is not where our young people need to be. For me, some of the principles then that we can pick up on. The principle of a functional space, we again saw that at Putney Girls yesterday in the design technology area, a functional space where you've got a flat surface and it's not cluttered and you can put things there and you can move things about. So you have the principle of the kitchen with functionality, clean service, a principle of the cafe with its conviviality and interactivity, the principle of the caravan, space saving. One thing you can do with industrial classrooms, instead of deciding you've got to have rows of desks or even a horseshoe, you can actually drop things down so that you can turn things from the horizontal into the vertical, or drop them quickly, either up against the wall or back down. And we know we can do that in the tube here. I just keep reminding myself to put the seat back down. But there are ways in which you can quite cheaply open up a space, and you can do that by caravanning. That is by having sliding things along walls where you can put things away or drop things away and open up a larger space, a circular space for meddling in. The cloister, and Kevin and I talked about this yesterday, when we went to Eton yesterday, we saw a couple of boys who had found themselves a very isolated space, and they obviously had almost luxuriously taken themselves away to huddle over something and to work on it, and we burst in on them and were apologising. There they were by themselves. And we're thinking about the importance of the cloister, and increasingly I know the school I'm at, which I'll show you in a moment, the new building is actually about reclaiming the pleasures of the cloister, which I think is interesting in terms of what we're talking about here. They have a building with all the excitement, I guess, of the opening up, but also where that for young people, a safe place, but also a place of contemplation and a place of composure and a place of bookishness, indeed, is something they're going to look to as well. A very different sort of building, so that the campus becomes a pastiche in which this becomes possible too. We need a space that's colonisable, so one teacher can actually be in World War I, and the maths teacher can come in, and new technologies throwing images on walls and so on can make that possible. It's not ridiculously expensive, and we can get young people, and I've seen them do it. They actually prepare the room as a trench in World War I, and they do so virtually by changing the images on the wall into the no man's land. And they come back into World War I. It's a marvellous possibility. And you can do that in an industrial classroom. You don't have to have some whole new building. We want it user-friendly for Jana, and we want it a self-managing access for her too. Here are some of the just images I'll show you of the building. This is something that you might say, well, you know, we don't have the pennies to do that. It was an expensive but beautiful building. And it caused some concern at the time. It's an award-winning building at the school, at the Brisbane Girls Grammar School, where I'm now writer in residence. And in the school, the idea here is that the community can look at itself. Now, this is not it's a very different design in Putney, and also very usable, workable design, but much more about an interior. Here, the idea is that there's a formal end of the school, and you'll see this when I show you a video in a moment. There's a formal end where, close to the road and the noise, it's internal. And that's where this research centre is going to go, it's very internal. And it's going to value the interior, the cloister. In this part, this is the other end. As we move away from the road, this building was built, as I said, it's won a design award, and the idea is that people look at each other. Now, when the trustees first saw the design, they said, "What's this big space in the middle?" They said. "We could use that space," there's the exterior, it's very beautiful, "but this big void in the middle, when we look at that, the classrooms around, and so couldn't we put something in there?" So, well, no, the idea is, and by the way, this is the cafe, but just show the cafe is, is along here. The cafe is in the middle of the school, and the girls' artwork and so on is part of the cafe. So it's in the middle of this building. And you can see the levels: music downstairs, design, technology, art. The principal says, she goes to the art room, she says, "I want this place messy. I want to see paint on the floor. Stop cleaning it up. I want to see evidence of risk-taking. I want to see evidence of the messiness of working things through, of trial and error." But here, again, the question of what are we doing with all this space unused? Well, it's not unused. It is for people to see each other in community. And so the issue now is interesting to me, how the girls use this space, how they colonise this space, what they do. And thinks about, well, you know, the girls will probably be over there, but indeed they'll sit somewhere on the concrete, or they'll go where they go. But it's a marvellous sense of a community which can both be separate and together, and where those things are possible in this creative learning centre. Now, what I'm going to show you now is a video. It's on YouTube, and you'll be able to go to it yourself, but it's a video of the school, and as you watch it, you'll see that the girls, it's done with the girls inviting you into the front of the school. You can see it's the beautiful old colonial formal building, which is very much about an interior space and very much about a heritage space, where the girls come to value their past and have a strong sense of connection with their past. But then it gives way to this beautiful building. And you'll see the various spaces, and what you get a sense of is not this school is all of a piece. You get a sense of this school is coherent but not uniform. There is an overarching logic which says buildings will serve particular purposes and will have particular philosophies. What we're not trying to do is do a one-size-fits-all template of the sort of things that we did in schools worldwide in the 50s and 60s, when the baby boomers came with a rush and we built lots of cheap and very ugly buildings that served functional purposes, but increasingly not buildings which are very helpful when it comes to somebody trying to service someone like Yana. So I thought we might have a look at this and then just see. Now that, I would say, you know, may not do all the things that we would want for our girls, but when it comes to the pleasure of the rigour that we're looking for, I would argue that the feel of the school I'm in, but also that disposition to pleasure and also to the beauty of the place and a strong sense of the affordances of the place. In the Australian vernacular, I'd say that's a bloody good start. Thank you.